This podcast contains some strong language and some stories involving violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Warfighters United, where veterans' voices are heard and transitional resources and programs provided. This podcast is sponsored by the Veterans of Foreign Wars, a service organization that provides our military and veterans resources and representation throughout our warfighters in the nation. They provide community support and camaraderie we all miss being in the military. Join the VFW today and make a difference. With us today, we have the founder and president of Perseverance Productions, film director, actor, and producer, Jake Rademacher. Very nice to have you on the Warfighters United podcast. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and so I was watching your movies. You've got two of them. You have Brothers at War, which you started recording in 2005, and 2009 that hit, and it was produced by not only yourselves, but the Gary Sinise Foundation. Now, starting there, tell me a little bit about why you decided to do that movie.
Well, I went to Iraq because my brothers, Isaac and Joe, came back from Fallujah, where they had served with the 82nd Airborne. And after a conversation, I discovered, they told me the truth was not making it out of Iraq. And as a brother, that really pissed me off. So I decided to take all the money I ever made as an actor. I started a production company. I got permission from the Department of Defense, and I actually joined my brother Isaac on his third deployment in Mosul, Iraq, and embedded in his unit over there, went out to the Syrian border with his LURS guys. Eventually, I was able to do 3 more embeds. Later that year, in 2005 into 2006, I embedded between Ramadi and Fallujah around Camp Habaniya with National Guard Infantry Company, sniper team, Marine advisors working with the 1st Iraqi unit to get its own battle space.
That must have been something. What was it like being a civilian going over and not only serving besides your brothers, but to be there in the action to actually tell that truth in the story?
Well, it was crazy. It was funny at my expense. I think the film does a good job of showing me as a fish out of water. But it was also unbelievably eye-opening and inspiring. I had this opportunity to go with different units. So I would go with a different unit almost every day and then return with others. I'd get a chance to kind of go on whatever interesting mission was happening. And it gave me a really holistic view of what was going on the ground and also like who we have serving over there. And I started Brothers at War for my brothers, but I really finished it for all the friends I made along the way.
When I was watching that movie, that movie really hit home to me in a lot of different ways. You really captured what our military service members go through when they go overseas, and not only our military service members, but their families as well. And this new movie you have coming out, Brothers After War, kind of 20 years later, and you go back and you get to go meet some of the guys you were embedded with and just see how they were doing. I mean, that's got to be such a full circle. What was that like traveling throughout COVID and meeting the guys again 20 years later, 15, 20 years later, and just seeing how they were doing?
It was full circle. I had just come off of a really tough international custody battle, which had really wiped me out financially, but also just emotionally and mentally. And so when I took this on, going to revisit these friends I'd made in Iraq, it was inspiring. It was just so wonderful to reconnect with them. In the meantime, between the two films, I'd used the first film and created a workshop around it and done that workshop for, I think at that point, about 40,000 service members and their families. So I'd helped a lot of other people come home from war and reintegrate with their families. This project was so special because I had a chance to kind of do a deep dive and go even beyond that knowledge that I'd accumulated over years. And with my friends, have the excitement of reconnecting, seeing how they're doing, capturing that. I got to spend a day in the life kind of with them at their job, but also go back into their living room and talk to them about, their emotional states and what they're up to. So in the film, I get to jump out of an airplane with Derek, who's now a professional skydiver. Looks like the Flying Viking. I got to go down to Honduras and follow Chris doing scuba diving and also an outreach mission to a medic that was struggling with alcohol and drugs. Got some pointers on shooting from Grundy, who is now training, special operators on small arms tactics. So I had an opportunity to do all this fun stuff, and that's all in the film, that excitement and that adrenaline rush. But I also had a chance to sit down with them and do a deep dive into how they're doing and some of the tougher things they've faced over the last 15 years as they've come home from Iraq. And that was incredible, moving, eye-opening, transformative. It was just a beautiful experience for me personally, and it's been so touching to see how much the film has impacted others who are now watching it as well.
I know it impacted me, and a lot of the movies. So I'm a skydiver as well. I've got over 500 jumps, and when he said, you look at the military and you think we're adrenaline junkies, well, sometimes we are, and that was one of the things, jumping out of airplanes for me really did not only my mental health a great justice, but it helped me relax. It helped me not be so vigilant, not have so much anxiety. And what was funny was when I was watching the first Brothers at War, or actually it was Brothers After War when I was watching it the other day, you were talking to I believe it was a chief warrant officer that got shot in the face. And he was explaining when he was running in the first round, when that bullet, was going so fast and missed him by inches on his face. It made me think back of when I was in Sacagawea. My platoon sergeant just got killed, and we were at a pause right by the road. Somebody sprayed some AK-47 rounds, and about 6 inches in front of my face, a round hit the wood right in front of me. Luckily, there was not a second round. But when he said that, man, that brought me right back to that moment while we were sitting there drinking coffee at about 7 o'clock in the morning, Iraq time. And
wow.
Then when there's a lot of parts when you were talking to your brother about anger management and traumatic brain injury, I think anger management, or just anger in general, once you've been in the military so long, plays a huge part when you come out and transition. And to be able to, what your Brothers After War did, not only make it go in full circle, but you helped tell the story in true light of what a lot of our service members are going through, especially guys who've done multiple deployments. I think you said your brothers have done over 15 between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how many guys are out there that are just like them?
A lot.
Who have, put their lives on the line for years to protect our freedoms. I mean, what is it like for you being a family member of your brothers, watching them deploy all the time?
Well, it's scary. I think it changes each time depending on where they're going and what's going on. I think, there's a really nice moment at the end of Brothers at War where, at the beginning, my brother's heading off to Mosul. There's some anxiety, but I'm also a little bit excited. I'm kind of hoping to join him, and eventually I do. But at the very end of that film, Joe's going off on a second deployment, and you can see I get overcome with emotion because now I've been to where he's going. I've spent, gone there twice, spent 3 months, gone all over, been in combat myself, and so it's a different thing, sending my kid brother who's 10 years younger than me off to war. And it's hard, it's mixed emotions. You're very proud of them. You're excited for them a little bit because sometimes as the deployments go on, Isaac became a company commander and Joe eventually was in special ops. So, you're a little excited for them, but at the same time, you're worried. You hope you see them again. It's complicated to be sending people off to war.
Well, they've done it a lot more than most. I mean, I only did 2, and I could only imagine what it would be like to do 5, 6, 7 tours. Now, you made Brothers After War. When did you decide to do this second feature from the first?
Well, it's interesting. I was just a bridge from the second answer and then bridge into this for the last question. I used to do these yellow ribbon events, right, where we'd play the film and then go into journaling and group conversation. And I would tell the audience that I was often qualified to be in the audience with him because my brother was about to deploy or another one was about to come home or had just gotten home. So, doing these seminars and workshops all these years, I had a chance to see the power of the film to make tough subjects easier to talk about. So in 2019, the Gary Sinise Foundation started sponsoring all the workshops just to make it easier for me to get more done. I was able to start bringing on additional trainers and a little bit of a team to help support that. And they also decided, Gary and I worked on it for a couple years. They then decided to get behind it in 2019, and we started on the sequel, Brothers After War. And their one request in making the film was, they said, look, we'll sponsor Brothers After War if you agree to make a seminar for veterans and their families around this new film, like you made around the original film for active duty and their families. And I said, absolutely. So, that was a big reason why we're able to make the film. And we continue to do those seminars over the last year. We've done sneak previews of the film and then had seminars around them. I was just working with the DAV, California DAV at their annual convention last Friday, did a seminar for them. And we've got more coming up through the year. But that was a big reason. After spending all these years working with other veterans coming home, I really became curious about how my friends were doing. And I wanted to really check in on them. And some of them I'd stayed in contact with, some I wasn't as good in contact with. So it was, it was a combination of wanting to see them, wanting to really know and deepen my own knowledge about the veteran experience and transition experience. And then it was also wanting to create something for our veterans to be able to make conversations with their own families easier and to have a tool that they could use in their own homes or come to see together as a group to facilitate conversation. And then the final piece, and this is kind of important for a documentary, and this really happened for the first film, was, the first film brought you to Iraq and put a frame around who's really serving over there and the heart of the American warrior, whether it was the Marines or the soldiers or the airmen. Brothers After War is really doing the same thing. It's really letting you in to the insider's look at who our veterans are and what they're really feeling and what they really go through as they make transitions. And the hope is that for our citizens, that enhanced insider's look will increase understanding, which also leads to empathy and new ideas and new ways of how to support and reintegrate our veterans into society. Because we don't want them just to survive. We want them to thrive.
I am right there with you. That's exactly why we created Warfighters United. I started noticing that throughout my community and around the Lansing area in Michigan, that after our wars kind of ended, veterans kind of went to the back front. And, putting our veterans to the forefront now, especially now, as guys like your brothers and guys who've got 20, 25 years in are getting out and they're not knowing what to do for their future. There's not a lot of resource management out there to help them transition. And if it is, it's very small and very minute. And what I loved about this is, and I haven't let my wife watch Brothers After War yet, but what it really hit on was, my wife and I have been married for 15 years, and I haven't always been the best husband in the world. But I think if she watched this movie, she might be able to understand a little bit more about some of the things that we go through, not only while we're in, but even afterwards. And what I thought it caught really great was you weren't only interviewing your brothers and the guys, the warfighters that you were embedded with. You started interviewing their families and their wives, and I think it was your niece that was explaining what it's like when her dad leaves to go off to war. And man, that had to be a gut-wrenching moment that probably so many kids throughout America go through. How did you come up with all these, to put your family kind of in the middle of this whole film to help better America? Like what did they feel about doing this film?
You know, it's interesting. My third interview was Jenny, my sister-in-law. The fourth was Danelle. I was blown away in like 2004 and 5. I was blown away by what the spouses were going through and the sacrifice they were making. And Hunter, when she was just a baby, was in the film because she refused to go to her dad when he came home from war. That look of pain on his face, and then them kind of reconnecting or trying to reconnect with her was really, you know, a little bit of the end of that film. And so in revisiting that in Brothers After War, I wanted to interview him, and then Hunter actually wanted to be interviewed. You know, the families are so important. They're such a huge part of the story. You know, my hope is exactly what you said, is that you said, I think if my wife saw it, she might better understand me. What more powerful benefit could the film provide than that? Right. For you to feel as a veteran, like, hey, but this will give you some insight into me, and then maybe we can have a conversation, but it'll be from a place of you understanding or realize I'm not the only one that's ever lost his temper or felt that way or been aggravated by something. And that's my great hope for the film. That deep knowledge that life on the home front's not just about the veteran, but also about their family. You know, that's what carried into this next phase. And just like I wanted to kind of go to work with them, I also wanted to go home, and I wanted to interview the spouses of these guys and see what they had to say. You know, what their experience was. And sometimes they're the truth tellers, right? Sometimes they'll tell you stuff about their spouse that maybe the spouse wouldn't say. So I wanted it to be this sort of holistic look, this 360-degree view of our veterans. And so you're right. I mean, the spouses and the family members were really important to include in this portrayal.
Yeah, I really, your brother Joe, when he was talking about the traumatic brain injury, and you were like, when did you get that? Tell me about that. And he started telling, you know, traumatic brain injury didn't even come on the spectrum until about 2007-ish to 2008. And then over the last decade, we've really had some leaps and bounds. I didn't even find out I had TBI until 2018. And then it kind of made things make sense, because at the time, you know, we're all going through it and we don't know what's going on in our brain chemistry. We don't know what, why we're acting these ways. Different parts of our brains are damaged. Why you flip for script going, 0 to 100, with anger management stuff. And just the way that your brother told it, and it was funny. He said, you were asking him at one point in time, you were like, well, tell me about it. And he says, I can't tell you about it. That's all top secret. And you're like, well, tell me about the person in you, or whatnot, what it was. And my whole first tour was pretty much top secret with General Conway as his PSD team. We couldn't say where we were. We couldn't say what we were doing, how we were doing it. And so it was kind of like the same way of your brother Joe being in the Special Forces. He couldn't really say a lot to explain what you were trying to get out of him. And I could only imagine that there is quite a few people out there that are just like that. But now that they're 20 years later, maybe it is time for them to open up. What do you think is the number one thing that a veteran who's been serving for years, or a veteran that served 4 years in active combat zones, can do to help better themselves and family?
Thrivent is proud to support Warfighters United podcast. Let's create a financial approach that reflects your priorities and protects what matters most to you. Whether your retirement is far off or fast approaching, now's the time to plan. I'm Christopher Buck, a retired Marine and financial advisor with Thrivent, and I can help you work toward your goals with confidence. Call me at 517-525-2737 to get started.
I think they can, first of all, I think journaling is a very powerful technique. It's an ancient warrior technique going back to Julius Caesar, Marcus Aurelius. It's a great way to make sense of your experiences. It's a great way to let off steam. It's a great way to tap into your subconscious. So I think journaling is a great tool. I think it's also very important to know it's actually very important to be able to talk about your experiences with someone, or to create some art around them. You've got to process your experiences. And, being able to have a conversation, and how you do that can look different for every person. Everett Alvarez, the longest held POW in Vietnam, was did a Q&A with me recently, and he said something to the war and terror vets in the audience. He said, look, we first talk to each other, then we talk to others, then we talk to our families. And I think he laid out a very good program there. I think it's a little easier to talk to somebody, maybe you were overseas, in your case with the Marines, with somebody you served, somebody you were dodging bullets with. It's easier. They have that context. So it's great to maybe have a conversation with them. But it's also important to have that conversation outside of that, and then eventually to maybe talk to your family. The first time you open up and talk, it can be a little bit chaotic, right? You want to be careful who you're talking to. Does this person care about you? Does this person have the capacity to understand and not judge, but to understand and listen and be there for you? And you can find those people in your life. And then another thought that's very powerful, you said to better yourself, is to realize that if there's some experiences that you shoved into the filing cabinet and closed and didn't process at the time, so maybe that's a little bit of a dirty wound, it's helpful sometimes to go find a professional and actually find one that you like and that you can relate to and that you trust that can understand you. It can be helpful to talk to a professional and pull those things out of the box and talk through them. And there's some amazing therapies that have come onto the scene. The immersive therapies, things where you go back in time. And it's a little painful at first, but what ends up happening is you start to let some light and air into those experiences, get the insight of a professional to kind of talk through it. And on the other side of doing that work, those things stop having such a hold on your life. Your anger management can get a lot easier to handle. You just don't, like my brother Joe, he just doesn't get as angry anymore. He's got techniques and breathing and all that stuff, but he's also done a little bit of work going back in time and looking at some of the stuff that was sort of creating that ball of anger in him. So I think that's another step that someone could consider. In addition to those, there's some amazing programs look, our Brothers After War seminars are great. If there's one coming to your town, sign up. But there's also things like Boulder Crest does Warrior Path, which is like a 7-day experience. It's an intensive. You go off with about 7 or 8 other veterans, and they've got all these exercises that they take you through. And I've heard nothing but great things from people that have gone through that. In fact, Chris McKay in the film had gone to Warrior Path, and it, really sort of changed his life. It really helped him turn the corner on some of his experiences. So the bottom line, if I was to sum all of that up, it would be, it's important to find a way to communicate and process your experiences. It might be a little painful in the moment, but it's going to really create long-term benefits for you.
Yeah, so I reached a dark point in my life a long time ago. It was probably about 8 years ago. And the Semper Fi Fund sent me down to Florida, to Tampa Bay, to an inpatient facility with a lady by the name of Jenna Temple. And she led the U.S. military. In fact, she did a 6-month stint at Ramstein doing EMDR therapy, eye movement desensitization therapy, which is kind of a huge psychotherapy, but it helped me not only revisit some of those old wounds, but make them not so bad. And I spent a month doing that. Every couple of days, we'd do a session. And that probably did more for me than a lot of other therapies that I've been through. But I think for veterans out there, they've got to find their right fit, right? And so it used to be 22 veterans commit suicide a day. I think now they say we're down to 17. Do I believe it? Probably not. But what would you say to those veterans that are reaching those dark points and those dark places, and those bad thoughts are creeping into their mind of doing something to themselves?
Well, I would say first, one of the best ways when you're in that really, really critical moment, the folks, and with the new seminars, we've had a chance to talk to a lot of people that are having suicide ideation, and in fact, they've even saved a few lives. A lot of times it's looking at what are you more afraid of, or what do you love more? Whether that's your children and thinking about what are they going to do without you, know they're not going to be better without you, or other people that care about you, other family members, other friends. I mean, that's something to kind of focus on in those critical moments. I think the other thing is like that, to reach out for some help. It's not a big deal. 30% of all veterans, statistically speaking, according to the USC study, 30% at risk for suicide at some point. So you feeling this way, you're like 1 in 3. Don't, I discovered in Brothers After War, my own brother, Joe, talked to me for the first time about putting a 9mm in his mouth and coming close to ending his life. I've realized in making this film that we as a community have to this shouldn't be a taboo subject. It shouldn't even be a big deal. It should almost be sort of expected. So if that's the case, we as a community have to get better about talking about it if we feel that way ourselves, and also feeling very comfortable asking someone else if they're how they're really doing. And the reality is, if you on the flip side, if you see a friend in a dark space, it's almost impossible for a veteran to hide from about 3 questions from somebody that has a relationship with them and cares about them. So if you ask them, hey, how are you doing? They'll be like, yeah, great. Oh, what's great? Yeah, I think I might get a divorce, my wife. You're going to get a divorce? Yeah, we're really not doing very well. I mean, within 2 questions, you can really get to a much deeper place. And so, I mean, everyone says, yeah, reach out for help. And I want them to do that. But I also, if they're really in a dark space, I would say to them, I want you to focus on what about your, what do you love more even than your own life? Who would be really affected? What are you afraid of? And once you kind of hold on that, let's start becoming curious about living. Let's start maybe trying some of these more advanced things to get past the depression or to get past the past experience that's troubling you. And eventually, you can come to terms with that and start thinking about the future. What are you excited about in the future? There's different stages of this, right? So when you get past that critical moment, then you got to start thinking about what would I be? One of my trainers, Noel Apana, is just received Disabled Veteran of the Year from the DAV, suicidal about 3 times. And in our seminars, one thing he says is, I started to become curious about living, and he started thinking about what he wanted to do in the future. And start casting lines into the future. I'd like to do this. I'd like to do that. I'd like to do this with my kids. I'd like to have a relationship, whatever it is. And I started doing that myself. And it's such a powerful technique, right? So for veterans, what I want them to do is make sense of the past. That's important. But at the same time, also start thinking about some things you'd like to do in the future, because that has a powerful impact on your present mindset.
I think that's a very good insight that we could all take advantage of. I mean, when you were talking, you went down and you did the scuba diving with your buddy there, and you guys met up with him, and you're supposed to meet up with him the next morning to go scuba diving with him, and he didn't show up, and I think it was your friend there. He said he's not at rock bottom yet. And when he gets to rock bottom, he'll call. We'll come down. We'll do the same thing. We'll pick him up. And what I thought was so amazing about that is 3 months later, that veteran, he did call, and they went down and they got him out of there. And so hitting rock bottom, I would love it that if veterans are out there and they think they're about to hit rock bottom, it is not bad of you at any means to know you're going there and do something sooner. But how did that make you feel when you found out that veteran that you guys were going to meet to get out of there and help called back 3 months later and said, hey, okay, I'm ready?
Oh, I was ecstatic. I thought that was beautiful. And I think that, one of the things I try to tell military family members and veterans and is, our job is to do our best to reach out. What they were doing there was they were reaching out. They went there. They did the intervention. It's up to the, in this case, an addict. It's up to them to reach back and accept the help. But it's so amazing that by going there and demonstrating and finding them and telling them, when you want to leave, we will come here and walk you off the island if we have to. We'll get you home. We'll get you some help. We care about you. that seed was planted, and he did take action on that eventually. So it worked. That intervention worked. And so I just think that's a huge lesson for us. And, a final piece of that story was Walmart sponsored the premiere of Brothers After War in Bentonville on February 28th. And that veteran came with his family to that opening. That was also attended by those same sheepdog guys.
Wow. Gave me the chills just hearing that.
And apparently he's doing great now. He came back. He got into a treatment program. He now has a really nice girlfriend, and he's got a great life going.
And see, those are the success stories that people need to hear about, because a lot of guys say, we had that suck it up attitude that, whatever happens, we just have to eat it, bury it deep down. But sooner or later, that's going to regurgitate up. And when it does, it will come out of nowhere. It'll hit you like a ton of bricks. And I mean, I personally have felt that way in the past. And, I have a great saying, fall down 7, get up 8, right? No matter how many times you fall, as long as you get back up on that horse, you're always going to make it further than doing nothing at all. If you're not stepping forward, you're dying inside. And so this new movie came out February 28th, Brothers After War. How did that release go?
It went great. I mean, we got a lot of movie chains to agree to put the film out. Regal Cinemas was off the charts. They played it in 100 movie theaters. We were in theaters for up to 3 weeks in some place because so many people kept coming and telling others about the film. And, so it was and then we started bringing it around the country. We had veterans in, Wyoming or Montana or Iowa or Mississippi, New Jersey said, the film didn't open here. Can we bring it here? So we did. We'd do these one-night events where they'd get together and watch it, in groups of 100 or so. So it was really exciting. I wanted our veterans to come together because community is another important aspect of all of this. And so I had this dream and this vision for the opening of the film to be a community event and a chance for veterans to come out and see the film together and have conversations and know they're not alone. And that happened. So, probably about 15,000 people saw the film that way, which is really beautiful.
Oh, that's gorgeous. And so on Monday, I believe, the digital version is coming out on this?
Yep, Tuesday, May 27th. The film is getting released digitally on all the major platforms, Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, Microsoft, all of those places. And it's even getting a DVD release. Walmart is taking 12,000 copies and putting them out on their store shelves, and Amazon's got the DVD for sale as well.
I'm going to have to go get it just to put it in my personal collection. And I recommend to any veteran out there that has served, and even if you haven't served and you're going through rough times, you need to go get this movie, Brothers After War, because there's so many relatable parts in this movie that anybody who served can relate to, and it can do nothing but help. And also it can make you feel like you're not alone, that your feelings aren't alone. There's other people just like you out in the United States that are probably going through sometimes worse stuff than you, or, have been severely injured and, trying to figure out what they're doing with their life. And like you said, figure out how to live and figure out how to move forward versus backwards. I appreciate you coming on Warfighters United today. You are an instrument that not only captured what the Iraq War and Afghanistan War has done to our warfighters throughout the nation, but this circle back around really is a huge plus when it comes to family members kind of just getting the gist of what happens overseas. And the fact that you went over there, 3-4 times to, be in your brother's shoes. I got one question for you. Did Joe ever give you a seat at the table?
Yeah, eventually I earned one. I think you could see it at the end of the first film. There's this moment when I got my hand on the back of his neck, and he's about to head off, and I'm his big brother again. And in Brothers After War, to be honest, the person in my family who was the most supportive of the film was Joe. Joe understood intuitively that this film would help other veterans. So he championed it within the family. He was incredibly generous with his own story in the film. And, in the movie you see, and I think it's probably modeling good behavior, it's rocky sometimes between Joe and I. He gives me a hard time. I was at the Reagan Presidential Library watching it with a couple hundred people 2 nights ago, and they're laughing at the way he's just busting my chops multiple times in the film. Oh, my God. But the reality is there's also a lot of love there. And some of these topics are difficult for veterans to talk about and for family members and civilians to try to communicate about as well. But we have to have these conversations, right? We just have to have them. And so I think it's great that in Brothers After War, you see that. You get to see it in a really fun way. Sometimes we get into some tense moments. We get into some arguments. One might even say a fight in a kitchen in Italy. But that's okay. That's what needs to happen. And, I definitely have earned a seat at the table with Joe now. And it's worth earning. Joe's just a great guy. 9 deployments, 5 kids now. He's an inspiration for me. And it's been wonderful doing this film and making this film and getting into a closer relationship with him during the course of that. And my prayer and my hope is that every military family experiences a little bit of that too with this project.
Well, my hope is that the Gary Sinise Foundation, once this, it's already a huge hit, but, somehow we could all raise funds to make sure every military family gets a copy of this in their hands, maybe as the guy's getting out of the military, or, the VA could even sponsor some of this stuff and start handing them out at the VA to families, going through family counseling, or, a guy going through therapy. I think movies like this, there needs to be more of them. And it just shedding the light on what our service members go through after they get back. And even if they're still in or when they get out of the military and they're transitioning, I think if this Brothers After War were 10 years ago, it would have been, it would have been mass distributed like it's about to be now. And so, Jake, I appreciate you coming on Warfighters United. This definitely hit home for me, as it will thousands upon thousands of other veterans. So where can somebody go to rent Brothers After War or go see it?
Well, yeah, for the cup, the price of a cup of coffee or two, you can rent it or buy it. You can see it at Amazon. You could see it at iTunes. You can see it, it's on store shelves in Walmart. I believe it's also Google Play, Microsoft. So just about anywhere you can get a video on demand, Brothers After War is there. And if you want to get a list and go right to the link, you can go to brothersafterwar.com, and we've got a place right there. It says Watch Now. You click that, and it'll take you to a page where you can find the site that works best for you.
And so if somebody wanted to do your workshop, how would they go about doing that?
The best thing to do would be to shoot us an email, info@brothersafterwar.com. Reach out to us, let us know that you would like to go. We also are very active on our social media, like our Facebook and Instagram especially. We post every time we're going to do a workshop. We try to post it out 3 or 4 weeks in advance. We're about to post our schedule for this year. We've got about 20 locations that we're going to. We'd love to have local veterans come and be a part of those seminars. So that's a two-folder. Email us if you'd like us to bring it to your community. But check out our website, brothersafterwar.com, and check out Facebook and Instagram, because we do every time, we do when we create a flyer, we create an Eventbrite, and people can go ahead and sign up for those. All of the seminars are free, paid for by the Gary Sinise Foundation as a thank you for your service and your family support. And we give you free journals and the whole 9 yards with that. So stay connected with us, and eventually it'll probably come to your community. If you want it to come a little quicker, shoot us an email, and we'll try to make it happen.
Is there any of those 20 in Michigan by chance?
Well, maybe there is now.
I think it would be great. I know you just talked to the 125th VFW National Convention. I'm a VFW post commander myself, and just took over the junior vice district commander for District 9. And I think that these seminars could do wonders here in Michigan, as well as everywhere else across the nation. So we might have to talk about making that happen in the future.
Well, we should absolutely partner with you to do that then, because, I'm going to Chicago, I think on June 14th. We're going to, next up is Montana for the Montana VFW annual convention. We're going to do the Brothers After War seminar for them and be able to showcase it for leaders of the VFW across Montana. And then after that, we're going to go to Atlanta. Every place we go, the VFW has always been very supportive and very helpful about, making sure their members know that it's there. And quite honestly, sometimes the VFW, like when we went to Newport News, they're the ones that are pulling us in and really providing all that support locally to get the word out to local veterans that were coming to town.
Well, I'm definitely work on your behalf. We'll get this put up on VFW MI Michigan, which will go out to all 500 of our posts. And like I said, thank you so much for doing this podcast with Warfighters United, and keep doing what you're doing. You're an integral part. I think it makes it even better that you're a family member of veterans and that you got to go over and experience what they were doing. But there's no insight like some of the insight you've provided. So thank you very much for coming on Warfighters United. And if you want to hear more about this, you can go to warfightersunitedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to Warfighters United Podcast on Facebook. Send me an email. Let's help get Jake up to Michigan. Jake, have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Eric. We'll see you soon.
Hoorah.